Alright, once we have the corridors for ramp 2 and ramp 4 placed in our corridors DGN, we're going to have to create a match line that's on the north side of ramp 2 and at this location where ramp 2 and ramp 4 meet on the edges of pavement, and runs all the way through the Bighorn intersection so that we can target these corridors and make it fill out the remaining missing area right here. And we're also going to use point controls and target the edge of Bighorn. To get started with this, we need a match line that runs down through that we can target. To do that, we're going to go to ProjectWise, and we're going to open up the plan.dgn. We're going to check in our corridors. Okay, once we are in our plan.dgn, you can see we're missing some items in here, and we want to bring those in. So we're going to go to the reference dialog, making sure that view number 1 is the view that we're putting these items into. So let's just make sure and left click on view number 1 and make sure that that's active. Once that's active, we're going to reference in. We're going to go to Tools, Attach, and we're going to bring in our civil geometry, our corridors, and our terrain file. And we'll say OK to that. And we'll go ahead and bring those in. And once they're in the file, we'll go ahead and turn off the references here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set the existing terrain. We're going to go ahead and set it active. It's one of the first things you like to do when you come in. The next thing we're going to do is zoom in a little bit right around ramp 2 and ramp 4 and Bighorn. So we will kind of want an area similar to this. What we're going to do is we're going to offset this ramp 2 18 feet to the north, or to the left side of that. First thing we want to do for that is we're going to go out and set our feature definition to a match line. And the match line is going to be under Design, Design Standards, Roadway. As you scroll down, there's a match line in that location, so right there. So we're going to make that same match line, and we're going to go ahead and turn on the match line feature to make sure that it's being used. And then what we want to do is, like I said, offset this. And we're going to just do the whole entire element. Just let it offset the whole thing, even though really our profile is just going to be right through this area right here. That's all we really care about. So under the tasks, we're going to go to horizontal geometry. And we're going to go down here to the single offset entire element. Single offset entire element. We're going to go ahead and choose that. Our offset, we're going to make that -18, so if it's not that already, go ahead and make that -18 and enter. Okay. Our name for that, we can leave that as matchline if it comes up as that. If it doesn't, let's go ahead and type in matchline there. But it should come across as that, since that's the feature definition that we have up there. It says locate the element that we're going to offset. We're going to offset ramp 2, so I'm going to select it with the left. And then I'm going to move to the north side, the top, the left side of ramp 2, and left click in a blank area up there. And we're not going to mirror that. We don't want one on the other side, so I'll left click to accept that. And now we have a match line in there that's 18 feet off of the ramp 2 baseline. Okay, once we get that put in there, we're going to go and create a profile for that. So if you're following along in the manual at all, we're on step number 11 there. We're going to open the profile model for the match line. So what we do is left click on the match line. The second tool in there is the open the profile model, so we'll left click on it. And we're going to go to view number 8 in the toggles down there and open view number 8 and simply left click in that view. And what you'll see in there is an existing ground line. The existing ground line comes from the terrain model being active. And so what we're going to do then is we're going to go out and we're going to profile this based off of ramp 2. Okay, so we're just going to kind of use that edge of ramp 2 profile as our starting point to place this. So over here we're going to, if you remember from earlier when we placed this corridor in here, this template drop, it was from 13 plus 00 all the way to 16 plus 00. So in our profile window, we're going to kind of do the same thing. We're going to zoom in around 12 or so to the end of it. Okay, so we get something in there like that. So that kind of gives us the area that we're going to be working in, somewhere around 13 to about 16. The tool that we're going to use, I'm going to go ahead and left click back in the view number 1 to make it active, is we're going to go find the profile by slope from element. So that is under the tasks, vertical geometry, and it's in the bottom row there. Profile by slope from element. So it's the 4th tool over on the bottom row of the vertical geometry tools. We'll left click that. We're going to come out here. I'm going to take a look at the dialog box real quick. Point selection, we're going to do all the points that make up the existing profile out there, or the proposed profile for ramp 2. We're not going to do any profile adjustments whatsoever. We want it to come straight off of that at whatever percentage we tell it. And we don't want it to be up or down from that. So no vertical offset. Our slope, though, we're going to change that from 0% to 2%. So we're going to put a 2 in there and enter, and that should put a lock on that 2%. And we're not going to give this one a name right now. All this is going to do is just create kind of a starting point for us, and to see that we're kind of matching what that 2% is when we create our profile. We are going to create a profile by another tool that goes along this line, and we will name that one. So all I'm doing is putting in the 2% in here. It says locate the first element to profile. So this is the match line because we want to profile it, so we'll select it to the left. And it wants to know if we wanted to profile any other lines, and we don't, so we're just going to move to a blank area and right click. Okay, that says locate reference element. That's going to be ramp 2. We're going to use the profile for ramp 2 and go 2% off of that. So we'll left click on it. It shows us what it's going to do, project that profile out there onto the other element at 2%, and it says 2% there in the dialog, so I can left click to accept that. And then we just left click to accept through the rest of them. We're going to do all points, no profile adjustment, and no vertical offset. Then in that window on the right, you'll see that it has created a profile that's based off of that ramp 2. Again, we're more concerned with about 13 to 16 plus 0, 0, so this area right in here is where we're worried about. Okay, so we're going to go down to step number 20 in here, and step number 20 says that in the profile window we want to turn on line weights. So what we're getting ready to do is we're going to project some points that are based off of the edge of shoulder and edges of pavement for bighorn, and we're going to project those points into here, into this profile. And to be able to see them, we want to have line weights turned on because they're just little dots otherwise. So we're going to do the down arrow there in view attributes for our profile window, and we're just going to make sure that line weights is turned on, which in our case it is. Okay. So then the next tool that we're going to do is we're going to do a profile intersection point. So over here on the left hand side under tasks, our profile intersection point is on that first row tools and second from the end. So we're going to pick on that tool. It says locate element to show your intersection. Well, that's not real descriptive, but what that is the line that you want to show these points, these intersecting points on, which is going to be our match line, which is the same as this in this profile window. So we'll left click on that match line, and then it says locate which elements intersect. Well, our edge of shoulder, our edge of pavement, and then our other edge of pavement on the other side. And that's all on one side of the road. However, this is a different template that has 2 edges of pavement on it. So we've placed those in there, and now in the profile window you can see those points show up. So we're going to hit F4 there. That gets us out of the tool, and what we're going to do is we're going to create now a profile that goes from this 13 plus 0, 0 over across this distance and this elevation where we've offset, and we're going to go from that 13, 0, 0 all the way to these points that it intersects so that we can be at the same elevation. So in the manual I've given you some information to go on here. If you don't have the manual with you, you can just use the same numbers that I type in here, but basically what we're going to do is go under Tasks, and under Vertical Geometry we're going to go to the Profile Complex by VPI tool. So if you come down in Vertical Geometry, you'll see a Profile Complex by VPI. Second row up, second tool in. Okay. What that does is it gives me a dialog box up here. I also want to turn on Civil AccuDraw because I want to be able to type in stations and elevations. So down here at the bottom next to your view windows, we'll turn on Civil AccuDraw. Okay. Then we're also going to click on the banner for View 8 profile window for the Matchline. So we're going to make it active. So I left click on there to make it active. You'll also notice Civil AccuDraw now changes at the bottom to be Profile. Okay. So now we're in this window, so we're good to go there. And the stationing, as I move along there, you'll see the stationing will update and be along that Matchline stationing. Okay. In our Complex Element by VPI, I'm going to do a couple of things in here. First thing is this vertical curve length right here. I'm going to check mark that, and I'm going to put a 1 in there. Put 1 and enter. And what that does is it puts a little 1 foot length radius on every VPI that you place out here. And I do that because it's a whole lot easier to go modify that radius afterwards than try to put one in when you're finished. So I always put something in the curve length that I can go modify later. And that's what we're going to do here. So in the curve length, I put in 1 and enter that in the name. I'm going to go ahead and name this Matchline PR because I want to be able to make that active and know what it is later. So if you're following along at step number 26, we're going to call it Matchline PR. So it's the proposed profile for that Matchline. So then when I come back out into View 8 profile window here, I can type in my stations and elevations. So I'm going to type in 13 plus 00 in my station field for Civil AccuDraw and hit enter. And then as I move around, I'm going to move my mouse around a little bit after I hit enter, and it's going to lock me into that station 13 plus 00. The next thing is I give you an elevation. That elevation is actually on this projected profile that we have out there. And that number is 760.91. So we're going to type that in, 760.91, hit enter, and move the mouse around, and you'll notice that it is on that profile. So then all you have to do is, once those two are locked in, just left click to accept that, and you've started your line at that location. And so you'll notice now that it'll drag off of that line that you drew, and our next spot is going to be at 16 plus 00. So we'll type that into the Civil AccuDraw station, hit enter, move the mouse around, and you'll notice that it locks it in at 16. And our elevation is going to be 763.98. So 763.98, hit enter on that, and that should lock you in again pretty much on that line, that 2% line that we have out there. That is 2% off of ramp 2 baseline. So we'll come out and accept that location. Then our next clicks are basically going to be locking you in to those points that are there. So just make sure that you have your key point snapped and not your intersection snap, but your key point snap turned on. And don't use the middle mouse button or anything like that. Just let the mouse rest on there. Get the golden X. It tells you what that point represents, and once it does that, left click and it'll place it on there. And go to the next point, get the golden X, left click to place it on there. And then our last point out here, we're going to get the golden X on that very last point, left click on it, and then we can be done with that. We can actually just right click on that to finish that out. Once you hit F4, hit F4, and then we're going to make that the active profile by left clicking on the profile and setting it active. So it's the second tool in there. Okay. So now we have that in there. If you look in your 3D view, you'll see that that match line is now in there for us to use.